my daily rant, my daily take over at HartmannReport.com. It's titled, "The Governed in America Aren't Getting the Happiness They Deserve." I start out with former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. He's now passed away, but he made this comment, I believe it was back in the 1930s. He said, "We must make our choice. We may have democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both." The Declaration of Independence says that, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Okay, so the governed, that's us, don't seem to be getting the happiness that they want, or frankly, even that they need. I mean, poverty and homelessness stalk our land. Right now, 1 in 7 Americans live in poverty. Millions have no access to affordable health care. And American families suffer over 500,000 bankruptcies every year because somebody in the family got sick. Higher education is increasingly just for the well-off and the well-born. Most non-unionized workers have few rights and little say in the workplace. Only 10.8% of non-government U.S. workers have a union. Cynicism about politicians is so widespread in the United States that only 62% of Americans who are eligible to register to vote even bother to register to vote. And then, of course, all those people who are registered to vote, not all of them vote. And our wealthiest pay virtually no income taxes. For example, America's richest man, Jeff Bezos, paid less than 1%. And NBC reports, quote, "The 25 richest Americans paid little to no federal income taxes," end quote. So let's compare this with the other democracies of the world. Lower rates of poverty. Finland, 5.7%, Denmark, 6.5%, Ireland, 7%, Belgium, 8%, Belgium, Netherlands, France, Norway, Canada, Sweden, they're all in the 8% range. A national health care system, so nobody goes bankrupt because somebody in the family got sick. 51 countries have national health care systems. We are literally the only developed country in the world that does not have a national health care system. The one outlier outside of us would be Switzerland, but in Switzerland it is entirely run by nonprofit corporations, and it is still mandatory and very inexpensive. Widespread unionization. In Iceland, 89.1% of the people have a union. Sweden, 81%. Denmark, 74%. Finland, 74%. Belgium, 56%. Norway, 53%. On it goes. More eligible citizens registered to vote. In Sweden, it's 80%. Belgium, New Zealand, South Korea, Denmark, Australia, Iceland, Netherlands, and Taiwan, all in the mid-70s, et cetera. And rich people paying their taxes, while billionaires in America are paying 1%, 2%, 3% income taxes. The very top income tax brackets, federal, state, and local combined, are over 50%. In Japan, Denmark, France, Austria, Canada, Portugal, Belgium, Sweden, Finland, Israel, and Slovenia, and above 45%. In the Netherlands, Korea, Ireland, Germany, Italy, Australia, Iceland, Luxembourg, and Spain, according to the OECD. So how did America become an outlier? Why is it that we're the only country, the only developed democracy in the world that has a failing, frayed social safety net and is multimillionaires and billionaires who pay virtually nothing in income taxes? How did this happen? Well, in a nutshell, it all goes back to 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court in 1978 and 2010 in Buckley versus Vallejo, First National Bank versus Bellotti, and Citizens United, saying that political bribery by morbidly rich people or by giant corporations, political bribery is no longer called bribery. It's now called campaign contributions. It's now called free speech, and it's protected by the First Amendment. And the result of this is that rich people and corporations, with the Supreme Court's blessing, pay politicians to drill so many holes in our tax code that it resembles Swiss cheese, and then they use the money they save in taxes to further corrupt those very same politicians to gut our social safety net. It's like this, non-virtuous cycle. For example, There's a loophole, it's called the carry interest loophole, that allows hedge fund managers and private equity executives to basically pay very, very little in income taxes on, money that they're making. And that loophole was supposed to close in the Inflation Reduction Act. It would have saved the United States literally tens to hundreds of billions of dollars. And every Republican opposed closing the loophole. In other words, every Republican wanted to keep that loophole in place so that the Wall Street guys could stay rich, but they weren't enough to stop this from passing in the United States Senate. No, the industry had to go out and hand $2 million to Kyrsten Sinema, and then she killed it. So Sinema's sellout was reported in the media, but, America kind of collectively shrugged its shoulders. I mean, when everybody's a crook, nobody's a crook, right? This sort of corruption authorized by the U.S. Supreme Court, by 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court, has terrible consequences. The main one is that it produces massive wealth and income inequality. I mean, we're now a country where our billionaires are so rich, not only are they not paying any income taxes, but they're shooting themselves into outer space on giant penis-shaped rockets with their spare change, with their pocket change. And that massive income and wealth inequality, according to dozens of studies published over decades, one was published in Oxford's European Journal of Public Health, and it looked at 33 nations. Another one looked at a 2000 study, 24 study looked at 148,000 people across 148,000 people across 142 countries. They all came to the same conclusion. As societies become more unequal, as inequality grows, so does crime. Both violent crime and what you might call corruption, white-collar crime, which, clearly political corruption is in that category. Inequality produces crime, from burglaries to corrupt politicians. And ever since these 5 Republicans on the U.S. Supreme Court, now 6, legalized political bribery, setting the stage for the Reagan Revolution, our social trust, our social fabric has been disintegrating. Now, it wasn't always that way. Back in the early 1900s, Teddy Roosevelt put a stop to a lot of this stuff. They passed in 1907, they passed the Tillman Act, which made it a federal felony with prison time for lawyers, lobbyists, and executives for any corporation to give any candidate for federal office any kind of support, whether it's money, whether it's, workers, whether it's goods in kind, whatever. That law stood until 2010 when the Supreme Court struck it down with Citizens United. But during that period of time, from the time that, Teddy Roosevelt outlawed political corruption through the New Deal and the Great Society, Congress passed, and it just seems like it would be impossible now, right? We look at what's going on right now, Congress can't do a damn thing. But Congress passed during that period of time Social Security, the minimum wage, unemployment insurance, world-class public schools, nonprofit requirements for hospitals and health insurance companies, free to very inexpensive state colleges, the right to unionize, civil rights, voting rights legislation, publicly owned utilities, new highways and airports, quality mass transit, antitrust laws to maintain competition, Medicare, the EPA, Medicaid, school lunch programs, workplace non-discrimination for women and racial minorities, food stamps, tax deductibility for interest payments on car loans and credit cards, federal deposit insurance to protect people from bank failures, Head Start, and literally hundreds of laws that protect consumers and the environment from corporate predation and dangerous products. And then it all came to a stop. It came to a screeching halt. It started slowing down in a big way with the Reagan Revolution, but after 2010, after Citizens United, there hasn't, that was pretty much it. We've got to do something about this. Inequality has exploded. The morbidly rich, the headline of Time magazine says the whole thing. This is Time magazine. This is their headline to the article. The top 1% of Americans have taken $50 trillion from the bottom 90%. That's since Reagan's election. And that's made the U.S. less secure. This all tracks back to 5 corrupt Republicans on the Supreme Court. You think the Supreme Court isn't important? Republicans know how important it is. We got to do something about this.